This story is called My Ex-Wife Sent Me to Jail for Child Support. Then DNA proved I'm not the father. Now I'm free, taking my revenge. Before getting into it, I just want to say something quickly. If you've been watching the channel and enjoying the content, your support really matters right now. Things have slowed down a bit, and even something as simple as subscribing helps more than you'd think. It's quick, it's free, and it keeps this kind of content coming. Seriously, it means a lot. Alright, let's get into it. I'm posting this from a throwaway account because some of the people involved know my main. Quick background, since I know people always ask. I'm 34, former military, now working as a private security contractor. I did 8 years in the Marines, including 3 tours overseas. Eventually, I moved into the private sector because the money was better, and honestly, I wanted to build a stable life for my family. I've always been the provider type. Been hitting the gym 5 days a week since I was 17. I own my house, drive normal cars, and invest my money instead of wasting it on designer nonsense. That's just how I've always lived. I met Sarah when I was 25, right around the time I was transitioning out of the military. She worked as a receptionist at a doctor's office back then. She seemed simple, grounded, the kind of person who just wanted a normal life. She came from a middle-class family, had some college debt, which I helped her pay off, and at the time, everything about her felt reasonable. Looking back now, couldn't have been more wrong. You know how in movies, when someone's world falls apart, everything slows down? Sound fades. The moment stretches out? Yeah, real life doesn't work like that. It hits you fast. Brutal. No warning. It was a Thursday. I remember that clearly, because Thursdays were always my longest days. 14-hour executive protection shifts for this tech CEO who was convinced the world was out to get him. I'd been on my feet all day, wearing a 25-pound tactical vest in 90-degree heat. My shoulders were burning, my whole body exhausted. All I wanted was a hot shower, and maybe an hour with Emma, my 4-year-old daughter, before she went to bed. On the way home, I even stopped to pick up sushi from that overpriced place Sarah loved. Dropped $80 on her favorite rolls, dragon rolls with extra eel sauce. Funny how those little, pointless details stick with you. Things hadn't been right between us for months. She'd grown distant, barely talked to me, always glued to her phone. But I kept trying. That's what the military teaches you, right? You don't quit. You push through. I walked through the door at 8:45 p.m. Tired as hell, still in my tactical pants and company polo. And there she was, lying across our $3,000 leather couch, the one I paid for, scrolling through Instagram like it was her job. She didn't even look up when I put the sushi on the table. I want a divorce. Just like that. For words. No emotion. No hesitation. She didn't even lift her eyes from her phone. 7 years together. 5 years married. A daughter we both loved. Or at least I thought we did. And she couldn't even give me the basic respect of eye contact while tearing our life apart. I just stood there, frozen, still holding the bag of sushi while it slowly got cold on the table. What? You heard me, she said, still scrolling. I've already talked to a lawyer. Here's what's going to happen. Then she finally looked at me, and I swear, there was something in her expression, like she was enjoying it. She started listing her demands like she was ordering coffee. The house, the one you bought with your military savings. The Lexus, primary custody of Emma. And $3,200 a month in child support. I just stared at her, trying to process it. I was already paying everything. The $2,800 mortgage. Both car payments, $580 for her Lexus, $320 for my Toyota. Emma's private preschool, $1,400 a month. Dance classes, another $200. All the utilities. Groceries. Her gym membership, $150 a month at some women-only place. Her self-care routine, weekly manicures, monthly massages, hair appointments that cost more than my car payment. You're basically asking for everything, I said, doing my best to keep my voice steady. Years of military discipline helped, even when everything inside me was collapsing. She shrugged, finally putting her phone down. That's what my lawyer says I can get. Oh, and I want to adjust the custody schedule. Every other weekend for you should be enough. every other weekend. That's when something in me snapped. Not violently, that's not who I am. But I couldn't hold it in anymore. Are you kidding me? I said. I'm the one who takes her to school every morning. I'm the one who stays up with her when she's sick. I taught her how to swim. I read her bedtime stories. I take her to the park every weekend while you're off at yoga. She didn't react. Just picked her phone back up like none of it mattered. Yeah, well, she said casually. The courts usually favor the mother. My lawyer says it's pretty standard. That's when something else hit me. Emma wasn't home. It was 9 p.m. on a Thursday. She should have been in bed. Where's Emma? At my mom's, Sarah replied, completely unfazed. I figured this conversation might get emotional. Of course she had. She'd planned all of it. Probably rehearsed it too. And there I was, still standing there like an idiot holding a stupid bag of sushi, thinking I could fix whatever was broken in our marriage. I set the sushi down on the table, but by then my appetite was completely gone. How long have you been planning this? I asked, my voice tight. She looked at me and gave me that smirk, the kind that makes your blood boil instantly. Long enough to know what I'm entitled to. Entitled. That word hit me straight in the gut. After everything I'd done, everything I'd sacrificed, she really believed she was entitled to the life I had built. I need some air, I muttered, turning toward the door. I couldn't stand being in the same room with her anymore. Don't forget to pick up your things from the master bedroom, she called after me casually. I've moved them to the guest room. I didn't even respond. That night I just drove. No destination, no plan. Just aimlessly moving through the streets, trying to wrap my head around what had just happened. None of it felt real. My phone kept buzzing in the passenger seat, lighting up the dark interior of the car over and over again. Text after text from Sarah, each one more demanding than the last. When will you be back? We need to discuss the details. My lawyer wants to meet Monday. Be available. I expect you to be civil about this. Emma doesn't need to see Daddy having a meltdown. That last one. That one almost made me lose control of the car. Using Emma as a weapon already. That's when it really sank in. This wasn't going to be a clean break. Not even close. The next few weeks blurred together into one long, exhausting mess of lawyer meetings, paperwork, and watching Sarah slowly, methodically tear apart the life we had built. She moved into the guest room like it was nothing and started going out more than ever. Nights out, classes, whatever she claimed they were. Every time I asked about Emma, it was always the same answer. She's at mom's. She's having a playdate. Always somewhere else. Always out of reach. My first meeting with my lawyer, Richard, was a reality check I wasn't ready for. He'd been recommended by an old military buddy who had gone through something similar. He sat there flipping through the paperwork Sarah's lawyer had sent over, his expression serious. Look, he said finally, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. The demands she's making are excessive, but not unheard of. California family courts tend to favor mothers unless there's clear evidence of unfitness. But I'm the primary caregiver, I pushed back immediately. I'm the one there for Emma every day. Sarah's barely home 3 nights a week with all her classes and girls' nights. Richard let out a slow breath and took off his glasses. Do you have documentation of that? Calendars? Text messages? Witness statements? I didn't. And in that moment, I felt like an idiot. I had never imagined I'd need to keep records in my own marriage. Start documenting everything, Richard said firmly. Every time she leaves Emma with someone else. Every time she breaks a commitment. Every penny you spend on the household. We're going to need all of it. Meanwhile, Sarah was out there telling a completely different story. To anyone who would listen, I was the controlling ex-military husband who never gave her freedom, who used money to keep her dependent. The exact opposite of reality. But people believed her. Her friends, obviously. But even some of our mutual friends started looking at me differently. Like I was someone they didn't recognize anymore. Then came the first custody exchange after we set up the temporary schedule. That moment is burned into my memory. Sarah pulled up in my Lexus, the one I was still paying for, like nothing had changed. She stepped out wearing $200 Lululemon leggings and some designer workout top, looking completely put together. Emma saw me and ran straight toward me the second she got out of the car. I hadn't seen her in almost 2 weeks at that point. Sarah just stood there, tapping her foot like we were wasting her time. "Here's her bag," she said, practically tossing it at me. "I packed her medicine for her allergies. Don't forget to give it to her exactly at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. She needs to be in bed by 8:30. No sugar after 6. No screen time after 7. And make sure she does her dance stretches." I just stared at her. I had been the one managing Emma's medicine schedule for the last 2 years, because Sarah couldn't handle the stress of remembering it. I was the one who figured out her allergy triggers, found the right doctor, set up the entire routine. "Anything else you want to explain to me about my own daughter?" I asked quietly. She looked at me like I was just some employee she had to brief. "Just make sure she's ready by 6 p.m. on Sunday," she added. "I have yoga at 7. That yoga class she was always running off to. Yeah. That would matter later. The weekends with Emma. They were everything and nothing at the same time. Heaven because I got to be with my little girl again. Hell because I knew how limited that time was. Every second felt both precious and terrifying, like I was trying to hold on to something that was already slipping away. We'd build pillow forts in my new apartment, a small, depressing one-bedroom that cost way more than it should have. But I needed to stay in Emma's school district. We'd bake cookies, watch Disney movies, go to the park, trying to squeeze an entire week's worth of love into just 48 hours. Emma would talk about her day, her friends at school, show me the dance moves she was learning. On the surface, she seemed okay. But I could tell something wasn't right. She was quieter than before, more clingy. She'd wake up in the middle of the night sometimes, scared, just wanting to make sure I was still there. "Daddy, why don't I see you every day anymore?" she asked one night. I was tucking her into bed when she asked me that, and it honestly broke my heart, completely shattered it. What are you even supposed to tell a 4-year-old in that moment? That her mom has turned into someone you don't even recognize anymore? That her dad is doing everything he can, but the system feels stacked against him? Instead, I swallowed all of that and said the only thing I could. "Sometimes grown-ups need to live in different houses," I told her, trying to keep my voice steady. "But I love you more than anything in the whole world. You know that, right?" She nodded quietly, clutching her stuffed elephant, the same one I gave her the day she was born. "I love you too, Daddy. Can you read me another story?" Of course. I read her one, then another, then another. 3 stories that night. Honestly, I would have kept going all night if she'd asked me to. The drop-offs, though, those were the worst part of everything. Emma would cling to me, crying, begging me not to go, begging to stay just a little longer. And Sarah would just stand there, checking her watch like we were inconveniencing her. "She does this every time," Sarah would say, rolling her eyes. "You're making it worse by dragging it out. Just go already." Every single time, it felt like I was being ripped apart. And I started noticing changes in Emma. Subtle at first, but they added up. After she'd been with Sarah, she'd come back with expensive new toys, but still wearing the same clothes I had sent her in, now dirty or stained. Her hair would be tangled, like no one had even bothered to brush it. She'd be exhausted, cranky, clearly not getting enough sleep. I brought it up during one of our court hearings, hoping someone would actually listen. But before I could even finish, Sarah's lawyer stepped in smoothly. "Your Honor, Mr. Last Name, is clearly trying to weaponize normal childhood behaviors against my client. Children get dirty. They play hard. Ms. Last Name is providing excellent care while also trying to rebuild her life after years of being financially controlled." I just stood there, stunned. The judge nodded sympathetically at Sarah. Right on cue, she had tears in her eyes. Perfect timing, like she'd rehearsed it. That's when it really hit me. Perception is everything in family court. And Sarah, she was a master at controlling it. With every court appearance, I felt like I was losing more and more ground. The temporary custody arrangement slowly became something more permanent. My child support payments kept increasing, and Sarah's demands just kept growing. More money for activities I was never told about. More money for educational supplies I never saw. More money for medical expenses, even though Emma was already on my insurance. And through all of it, I kept showing up. I kept fighting. I kept trying to be the kind of father Emma deserved, even as the system seemed determined to reduce me to nothing more than a paycheck. At the same time, I was trying to hold my career together. Executive protection isn't like regular security work. You don't get the luxury of zoning out. One mistake, 1 second of distraction, and someone could get hurt. Or worse, I was working 60 to 70 hours a week, trying to stack as much money as possible because I knew Sarah's demands were going to bleed me dry. My schedule was brutal. 5 a.m. Wake up. Hit the gym. I couldn't let myself fall apart physically. 6:30 a.m. Get ready for work. 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Protection shifts. 9:30 p.m. Try to FaceTime Emma before bed, when Sarah allowed it. 10 p.m. Meal prep. Try to sleep. Fail. End up doing push-ups until I was too exhausted to stay awake. The lack of sleep started catching up with me. I'd find myself zoning out during client briefings, missing details I never would have missed before. My head just wasn't in it anymore. The divorce was consuming everything, eating away at my focus. My boss, Mike, noticed. He was an old military buddy, the one who helped me get started in private security. One day, after I nearly dozed off during a briefing, he pulled me aside. "Brother, what's going on with you?" he asked. "Clients are starting to notice. You're not yourself." So I told him everything. The divorce, the custody fight, Sarah's demands. All of it. He listened quietly, that old sergeant patience showing through. "Look," he said finally, "you know I've got your back. But in this line of work, we can't afford distractions. These clients trust us with their lives. Take some time. Get your head straight." Then he did something he didn't have to do. He offered me 2 weeks of paid leave. That kind of thing is rare in this industry. I used that time trying to put my life back together. Meeting with Richard. Going over finances. Trying to build some kind of case to get more time with Emma. When I went back to work, I told myself I had it under control. I didn't. About 3 weeks after I returned, I got assigned to a high-profile client. Tech billionaire. Received some death threats. Standard protective detail. Something I would have handled in my sleep before all of this. We were at a restaurant. The client was seated with his back to the wall, just like protocol requires. I was scanning the room, doing everything I was supposed to do. Running on instinct at that point. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced down. It was Sarah. She had sent a photo. No message. No explanation. Just a picture of Emma. Lying in a hospital bed. Looking scared. Hooked up to monitoring equipment. My heart dropped instantly. I texted back right away. "What happened? Is she okay? Which hospital?" No response. I called. Straight to voicemail. I called her mother. No answer. I was standing there, trying to stay professional, trying to do my job. But inside, I was completely falling apart. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught movement. Someone was coming toward our table, moving too fast, their hands slipping inside their jacket. In any other situation, my training would have taken over instantly. I would have stepped in without thinking, put myself between the threat and the client, handled it before it even became a problem. But this time, I hesitated, just for a split second. And in this line of work, that's all it takes. Turns out the guy wasn't a threat at all. Just someone looking for an autograph, pulling out a notebook, not a weapon. Crisis averted. But the damage was already done. My client noticed the hesitation. My team lead noticed it too. Later that night, after I finally got confirmation that Emma was fine, just a routine checkup, nothing serious, I realized what it really was. Just another one of Sarah's ways of messing with me. Not long after, Mike called me. "This isn't working, man. I'm sorry." That was it. 2 months later, I was sitting in the office again. This time, it was official. 2 clients had complained about my lack of focus. 15 years. 8 in the Marines. 7 in private security. A spotless record, multiple commendations. And just like that, it was over. I was out. The severance package wasn't bad. But with Sarah's demands and the legal fees stacking up, I knew it wouldn't last long. Is there anything I can do? I asked Mike. I hated how desperate I sounded. He looked at me, genuinely sorry. Not right now. Get your personal life sorted, then we'll talk. This industry's small. People remember both the good and the bad. I nodded, even though it felt like everything I had built was collapsing. I packed up my desk while my now former coworkers avoided eye contact, pretending to be busy. 15 years of service. Gone. Like it never mattered. And all of it traced back to one thing. Sarah couldn't even send a follow-up text to say our daughter was okay. When I confronted her later, she didn't even try to deny it. She just shrugged. I thought you should know she was at the doctor, she said casually. Not my fault you overreacted. I lost my job because of that, I told her, keeping my voice low since Emma was in the next room, and she actually smiled. Well, that should make for an interesting conversation in court, she said. When you try to explain why you can't afford child support anymore. That's when it hit me. She did it on purpose. She wanted me to lose my job. She wanted me to fall apart so she could turn around and paint me as the deadbeat dad who couldn't hold it together, who couldn't provide for his own kid. It wasn't chaos. It was a plan. Finding work after that wasn't easy. The job market for specialized security is strange. You're either in or you're out. And word spreads fast. A few old contacts tried to help, but nobody wanted to take a risk on someone in the middle of a messy divorce. So I started applying everywhere. Mall security, night watchman, bouncer, anything. Most places didn't even consider me. Overqualified, they said. What they really meant was too expensive, or too much of a risk. Someone who'd leave the second something better came along. Eventually, I landed something. Overnight security at a storage facility. Minimum wage. No benefits. Graveyard shift. A long way from executive protection. But it was something. The schedule was brutal in a completely different way. Working nights meant I barely saw daylight. Barely slept. On the weekends I had Emma. I was a zombie, forcing myself to stay awake, forcing myself to be present for her no matter how exhausted I felt. For months went by like that. Nothing but rejection, watching my savings slowly disappear. Richard, my lawyer, started reminding me about his fees. The apartment complex began sending notices about late rent. And the child support payments, they didn't stop. Didn't matter how empty my bank account was. The first time I missed a payment, Sarah blew up my phone. Where's my money? I knew you'd turn out to be a deadbeat. Hope you enjoy jail. Emma deserves better than you. Every message felt like a knife. I had never missed a payment in my life. Perfect credit. Always early. Always responsible. And now, I was the guy who couldn't provide for his own child. I went back to court trying to explain everything. Asked for a temporary reduction until I could get back on my feet. I brought everything, job applications, rejection letters, bank statements showing how close I was to being completely broke. Sarah showed up in another designer outfit, looking like none of this affected her at all. Her lawyer stood beside her, confident, almost smug. Your Honor, he began. What we have here is a classic case of voluntary unemployment. Mr. Last Name deliberately took a lower-paying position to avoid his obligations to his child. He's working beneath his qualifications by choice. The judge looked at me skeptical. Is that true, Mr. Last Name? I tried to explain. About losing my job. About how the industry works. About applying everywhere I could. But even as I spoke, I could hear it, how it sounded. Like excuses. The child support order stands, the judge ruled. If you fall into arrears, there will be consequences. Consequences. Yeah. I learned what that meant. I picked up a second job, stocking shelves at a grocery store during the day before heading straight to the storage facility at night. 4 hours of sleep became normal. My body started breaking down. I lost weight. Dark circles settled under my eyes. I was constantly exhausted. Emma noticed. One weekend, she reached up and touched my face, her little hand warm against my skin. "Daddy, are you sick?" I forced a smile, even though it felt like it might crack at any second. "Just a little tired, sweetheart. Daddy's working a lot right now." She looked at me for a second, then asked quietly, "Is it because of the money? Mommy says you owe her. She told Grandma you're not paying for my dance classes anymore." That hurt more than anything else up to that point. Sarah using Emma like that, turning her into a pawn, making her worry about things no 4-year-old should even know about. I had made it a rule for myself never to speak badly about Sarah in front of Emma, no matter what. But Sarah clearly didn't have that same restraint. She had no problem poisoning our daughter against me. After that, things only got worse. 2 more missed payments and the court warnings started getting serious. I sold everything I could. My car, my watch, anything that had value just to try and keep up. I was living on ramen and peanut butter sandwiches most days, picking up whatever odd jobs I could find on my days off, mowing lawns, painting houses, anything that paid cash. And then came that morning, 8 a.m. Loud pounding on my apartment door. I was already awake. Old military habits don't go away, even when you're barely holding it together. I opened the door and found 2 cops standing there. Both of them looked uncomfortable. "Sir, we have a warrant for your arrest for failure to pay child support." The younger one avoided eye contact. Maybe he'd heard about my military background. Word travels fast, even in places you don't expect. The older one just looked tired, like this was something he'd done too many times. They were decent about it. "Let me get dressed properly." Didn't make a scene. Still, walking out of your own apartment in handcuffs, that hits different. The holding cell was exactly what you'd expect. Cold. Smelled terrible. Felt even worse. But the worst part wasn't any of that. It was sitting there, thinking about Emma. What was Sarah going to tell her? That her dad was a criminal? That he didn't love her enough to take care of her? I tried calling Richard from the jail phone, but his secretary answered and told me he couldn't represent me anymore because I hadn't paid my legal bills. Perfect. The public defender they assigned me looked like he had just graduated high school. Kid had a caseload that would overwhelm someone twice his age. He barely even looked at my file before we went in. "Just tell the judge you'll pay," he said during our 5-minute conversation. "That's all they want to hear." "With what money?" I asked him. "I'm already working 2 jobs. I've sold everything I own." He shrugged, already distracted, already looking past me to the next case. "Figure it out, or you'll be back here in a month." That was the advice. When I stood in front of the judge, it was clear he wasn't interested in hearing my situation. "Mr. Last Name, the court doesn't care how you meet your obligations. Only that you do. Your child deserves support." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him about everything I had done for Emma that had nothing to do with money. The bedtime stories, the swimming lessons, the doctor visits. The way I had been there for her every single day while Sarah twisted everything behind the scenes. But none of that mattered. So I just nodded and said I would pay. I spent 3 days in county jail before one of my old military buddies found out and posted bail. 3 days. 3 days of missing work, which meant no pay. 3 days missing my scheduled weekend with Emma. 3 days of sinking lower than I ever thought possible. County jail gives you a lot of time to think. I kept to myself. Did push-ups in the cell, tried to keep some kind of routine, anything to hold on to a sense of control. Most of the other guys left me alone. Maybe they could tell I wasn't like most of the people there. When I finally got out, there was a stack of mail waiting for me back at my apartment. Bills mostly, and one thick envelope with no return address. Then I saw the name. Jake. Jake was one of my old teammates from the security company. One of the very few guys I actually trusted. The envelope was heavy, and the second I started reading, I understood why. "Brother, I've been carrying this for too long. You deserve to know the truth." Jake laid everything out. He'd been working security at high-end hotel events and had seen Sarah there multiple times, with her yoga instructor, Brad. But they weren't doing yoga. The first time I saw them, I thought I was mistaken. he wrote. But then it kept happening. Different hotels, different events. Always them, always too close to be just friends. He'd taken photos, logged dates and times. I know this is going to hurt, he wrote, but there's more. The next part, it made me feel physically sick. The timeline doesn't add up. Sarah was seeing Brad before Emma was born. Way before. I've got security footage and timestamps that prove it. He admitted he'd been sitting on this information for years. When you guys seemed happy, I couldn't bring myself to destroy your family. But now, after what she's doing to you, you deserve to know what you're fighting for. Inside the envelope were dozens of photos. Sarah and Brad. The hotels, restaurants, shopping together. Some from before our wedding. Some from when she was pregnant. Some from just a few weeks ago. I sat there in my small, empty apartment, staring at those pictures. And suddenly, everything started to make sense. All those late-night yoga classes. The weird schedule she always claimed Brad had. The way she'd get defensive anytime I suggested coming along. And Emma, God, Emma. I looked over at the photo of her on my nightstand. Really looked this time. Her blue eyes. Mine are brown. Her hair, lighter than both mine and Sarah's. The way she smiled. I'd always told myself she got that from my mom. And now, I didn't know what to think anymore. Had I been willfully blind all those years? Had I only seen what I wanted to see? Because I loved that little girl so damn much? My hands were shaking as I grabbed my phone and called Jake. Took me 2 tries just to dial his number properly. Why now? I asked the second he picked up. Why not back then? When it could have saved me all this hell? There was a pause on the other end, and when he spoke, he sounded genuinely regretful. I think about it every day, man, he said. But you seemed happy. You loved that kid so much, I couldn't be the one to destroy that. Then when the divorce happened, I figured maybe you guys had your reasons. That things just ran their course. I clenched my jaw. So what changed? I saw them again, he said. Last week. Another event. Sarah and Brad. And I overheard them laughing about you. About how they were taking you for everything. That's when I knew I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I hung up and just sat there with everything spinning in my head. For a full day, I did nothing but think. Trying to process it. Trying to make sense of years of lies collapsing all at once. Part of me wanted to go straight to Sarah. Confront her. Scream. Tear everything apart the way she had done to me. But the part of me that had been trained, the Marine, the tactician, that part knew better. This wasn't the time for emotion. This was ammunition. Maybe the only real weapon I had left in the war she had started. That night, I still went to work at the storage facility. Did my shift like nothing had changed. But when morning came, instead of going home to sleep, I went somewhere else. A different lawyer's office. Jake had recommended him. Someone who specialized in paternity fraud. The moment I sat down, I laid everything out. Jake's letter, the photos, every detail. He didn't sugarcoat it. This is going to get ugly, he said. But if what your friend documented is accurate, we can probably get the child support orders thrown out. First thing we need is a DNA test. Getting that test approved wasn't easy. Sarah fought it hard. Claimed I was just trying to dodge my responsibilities. Tried to paint me as desperate, unstable, anything she could. But this time, the evidence mattered. The judge reviewed what Jake had provided and approved the test. Then came the waiting. 2 weeks. The longest 2 weeks of my life. I spent hours staring at photos of Emma, studying her face like I'd missed something all these years, looking for signs, clues, anything that should have tipped me off. There was nothing, or maybe I just never wanted to see it. I barely slept during those days. When the results finally came, they arrived in a plain white envelope. Nothing dramatic, just another piece of mail. Inside, it was all medical terms, numbers, technical language, but only one line mattered. 0% probability of paternity. I didn't react. No anger, no tears, no shouting. For almost an hour, I just sat there, holding that paper, feeling like something inside me had been ripped out completely. When I finally managed to move, I called my lawyer. The moment I told him the result, his tone changed. Completely. "This changes everything," he said. "We're going to file to vacate all child support orders. And if she's been collecting from the biological father too, we're looking at fraud charges." Later that same day, he called me back. "We did some digging," he said. "She's been collecting from Brad as well. This whole time. Double dipping. This is fraud. Clear and simple." After that, everything moved fast. Subpoenas, bank records, investigations. Sarah's entire story, the one she had so carefully built, started falling apart piece by piece. A house of cards collapsing. But even with all of that happening, my mind kept going back to one thing. Emma. Biologically, she wasn't mine. But in every way that actually mattered, she was. Every bedtime story, every scraped knee, every night she woke up scared and came to me. She was my daughter. And the thought of losing her, of never seeing her again, I couldn't even handle it. What about custody? I asked my lawyer during one of our meetings. He looked at me with a mix of sympathy and honesty. "Legally, you don't have standing anymore now that paternity has been disproven," he said. "But given the circumstances, the fraud, the potential criminal charges, we might be able to argue for visitation based on the relationship you've established." It's a long shot. A long shot. Didn't matter. I had to try. Because Emma, she was the only thing in all of this that still meant anything. The day of the hearing felt unreal. Sarah walked in like nothing had changed. Designer dress, probably worth more than my rent. Fresh from some expensive salon. Looking polished, confident. Like she still believed she had control over everything. Her lawyer started talking first, spinning a story about confusion. About how she truly believed I was Emma's father. But this time, it didn't hold. My lawyer started laying out the evidence. One piece at a time. Bank statements showing child support payments from both me and Brad. Hotel records going back years. Security footage from multiple locations. Text messages between Sarah and Brad, discussing their plan. Medical records proving she had known the truth all along. With every piece of evidence, the judge's expression changed. Darker. Harder. By the end, he wasn't even trying to hide how disgusted he was. "Mrs. Last Name, what you've done goes beyond simple fraud," he said. "You have intentionally deceived two men, manipulated the court system, and most importantly, used an innocent child as a pawn in your scheme. This court takes a very dim view of such actions." Then came the moment I had been waiting for without even realizing it. The judge looked directly at Sarah, his voice firm. "The court finds clear and convincing evidence of fraud. All child support orders are hereby vacated. Mr. Last Name is entitled to restitution for all payments made, plus interest," the judge continued. "Furthermore, I am referring this case to the district attorney's office for criminal prosecution." I watched as the color drained from Sarah's face. Completely gone. This wasn't how it was supposed to go for her. She had been so sure of herself, so confident that she could manipulate everything, control the narrative, walk away with everything she wanted. She hadn't even considered this outcome. "But Your Honor," her lawyer stammered, clearly scrambling now. "My client is the primary caregiver for a young child. Surely you wouldn't—" "Counsel." The judge cut him off sharply. "Your client has committed fraud against this court and against two individuals. The fact that she has a child does not grant her immunity from the consequences of her actions." That was it. Right there, in the courtroom, Sarah was arrested. I won't lie. The feeling that hit me in that moment was intense. So intense I could almost taste it. After everything she had put me through, seeing it all finally catch up to her felt unreal. She ended up getting 3 years for fraud. But that wasn't even the end of it. During booking, they found her designer purse filled with illegal pills. Not just a few either, enough to turn it into intent to distribute. That 3-year sentence turned into 7 real fast. And then there was Brad. The second those child support orders came crashing down, he disappeared. Just gone. Ran off to Mexico. Apparently, he had his own legal issues we never even knew about. 2 weeks ago, I got a call from Sarah's sister. She told me Sarah had found God in prison, wanted to apologize, wanted my help getting her sentence reduced, said she had changed, that she finally understood everything she had done wrong. You know what I told her sister? New phone. Who's this? As for Emma, her situation at first just broke me all over again. With Sarah in prison and her biological father gone, she was about to be put into foster care. I couldn't let that happen. Biologically, she wasn't mine, but none of that mattered to me. I filed for custody anyway, based on the relationship I had with her, based on the fact that I was the only real, stable parent she had ever known. It wasn't easy, not even close. The system isn't built for situations like this. But sometimes, just sometimes, the right thing actually wins. Emma lives with me now, full custody. Both of her biological parents are out of the picture. Explaining everything to a 4-year-old. That part isn't easy. Trying to help her understand why her mom is gone without breaking her heart. That's something I'm still figuring out. But we're making it work. I've got a new job now too. Managing security for a major hotel chain. Better hours, better pay, and I'm home every night. And honestly, that's the best revenge. Emma's doing well, really well. Her teachers say she's happier than she's ever been. She's making friends, enjoying her activities, and for the first time, she's actually sleeping through the night. Something that never used to happen when Sarah was around. And Sarah, last I heard, prison food isn't exactly living up to her standards. Guess karma really is the ultimate gold digger.